second prize for Asia Week Story Competition years and years ago. I think it was 1982. And that time Asia Week was a real journal with a large distribution. And they sent an editor to come and interview me and a photographer and to take photographs, and they carried the interview and the photograph in their issue of this really short story. And that short story has been anthologized everywhere, Mr. Tang's Girls. And I thought, that's an interesting short story. It has these three sisters, and it has a very patriarchal father in Malacca, you know. And I thought, I want it to go somewhere. And so the novel is in fact a sequel of that short story.
Oh, okay.
Now, if I were going to write a sequel of this novel, I love that question, by the way. I haven't thought about it. I think it's a brilliant question. You're giving me ideas. I mean, seriously, Robin. You know, I should make you my pal, my good friend. You're giving me ideas. I might do something with the second sister, the one who's so unhappy, she doesn't get her life resolved by the end of the novel.
You know, I look forward to your sequel very soon.
I will dedicate it to you, Robin, if I ever write it.
Oh, thank you. You've been very generous. And folks, please do get hold of her book, The Sister Swing, published by Marshall Cavendish. And it's available at all leading bookstores. If you can't find them, you can get it over at Amazon.
For sure.
Yeah, it really is. It's an amazing novel. I heard so much about this. And also previously, she also wrote this book, Two Dreams.
It's a collection of short stories.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Tell us, what made you put this together?
You know, as a poet, it was very easy to move from poetry to short stories. It's a way just to stretch yourself and give yourself more space. And after a while, there were so many short stories that it seemed appropriate to put them into a collection. And that collection, the first collection, appeared, I think, in 1982 here in Singapore, called Another Country. And then, of course, I wrote more stories. And Feminist Press in New York, which comes up from the University of New York, asked me if I would publish a collection of short stories with them. So I put together this collection. And some of these stories go back many, many years. Written when I was a young woman in Malaysia, a few of them. Many of them were written in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it sort of is a transcontinental.
Now, what inspired you to move to the United States? I mean, you were raised in Malaysia, and then you moved to the United States.
Yeah, what quote-unquote inspired me? I don't know if inspire is the right word, Robin.
Okay.
I think the question is, what pushed me to the US? What pushed me? And what pushed me was what wasn't available for me in Malaysia. I wanted to do a PhD. They had no PhD in the University of Malaya then. You had to leave the country to do a PhD. And I think I was aware that I would not be happy unless I was able to learn some more. People talk about lifelong learning. I think it's a joke. I mean, you don't even have to give it a term. We humans are just born learners. And we don't have to come up with a concept for it, right? And knowing myself, I knew I couldn't be happy if I weren't learning more. A BA wasn't enough, a master's wasn't enough. And you really can't learn when you are limited to being a wife and a mother. I mean, of course, you can learn those skills of being a wife and a mother. But I think I was a particularly scholarly kind of learner. I love books. Really, really love books. I had a friend in Malacca. Her mother died when she was young. And she said to me that everyone remembered the mother as a reader. She would read all these romances every day. So there's this image of this woman, who died young in Malacca. And her entire life was spent in the pleasure of reading. And to me, that wasn't enough. The life of pleasure in reading is not a life that would have given me satisfaction, because that reading seems to me to still be insufficient. From the reading, you need to engage with it, and you therefore need to come out of the reading prepared to do something with the reading. And I think that's perhaps what scholarship is about. right? You do the reading and then you want to do something with it. You want to make sense out of it. You want to make a dissertation, a thesis, an argument, write an answer, a response, raise some questions. Whereas if you are stuck in a little town, being a mother and a wife, and the only time you have is just to read for pleasure, that engagement of the mind is dissipated, you know. So I would hear these stories about women in Malaysia and what happened to them in their lives, and I think to myself, that's not for me.
Oh, okay.
So I had all these negative models, and that pushed me out of Malaysia. So when I got a fellowship offer from Brandeis University, you know, the first and only Jewish university in the United States, even now, I was very fortunate. The Fulbright gave me a Fulbright, and Brandeis gave me a Wing International Fellowship. So with those two cobbled together, I could go off and do a PhD in the United States.
Now, is that equality in Malaysia at that time, and does it still exist today? Has that improved, or in terms of equality for women to
You
be
mean
educated?
equality or inequality?
About equality.
There was
or-
never any equality in Malaysia as I was growing up. You had to, as a woman, literally sort of bang against the door, and frequently you were turned away. You know, I got a first class honors, the first person ever in the history of that department. And when there was a job opening, they didn't give it to me. They gave it to someone else who had a second class. So there was no meritocracy involved with that kind of decision. And I think I didn't get it because I was a woman and I was a Chinese. And the person who got it was a male and he was a Muslim.
I see. I hope that
And
will change.
from what I've heard, it's become even worse in Malaysia. The notion of equality cannot survive in a country where the constitution of the country establishes, constitutional law that does not permit equality among the citizens.
So, have you written a poem about equality for women?
I've written lots of poems about women, but I've also written a poem about Malaysia and kind of lack of equality in Malaysia
Oh,
between the quote-unquote race groups. Yeah. I don't even think of them as race, except politically. In Malaysia, the discourse is always in terms of race.
oh. Now, before we introduce a new topic, folks, she has written a biography of herself, and it's actually
It's a memoir, it's a book of memoirs.
yeah, that's right. It's a memoir about her and Dr. Shirley Geok-lin, the title Memoirs of a Non Feminist. Of course, it has a American title to it, and she's going to tell us more about it.
The actual title is Among the White Moon Faces,
Oh yes.
and the subtitle is here, published in Singapore, Memoirs of a Non-Young Feminist, and published in the United States is called Memoirs of an Asian American Homeland.
That's right. So you can still get this book on Amazon. I don't know whether if the bookstores do carry it, but it's been quite a while back. But are you planning to reprint this book?
Oh, it's already been brought out by Marshall Cavendish again with a different cover.
Oh, that's very,
Yeah,
very
I
nice.
think they reissued it just last year.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
This is the one book that, in fact, made me well known in the US. It
Wow.
won the American Book Award, and it's been studied in many places. It's in the curriculum in the Modern Languages Department of MIT, for example.
Okay.
So it's a book that's put my name there among American writers. Before that, as a poet, a short story writer, the readers who knew me was a very small minority. So that's the issue with literature, right? Poetry is a very elite kind of genre, and the readership tends to be pretty small.
But is that going to change?
The internet is changing it a lot. Now through the internet, you can access all kinds of poems, and folks just go on the internet and write and publish and read. One of the problems, of course, is there's not that rigorous screening, so you might read a lot of very bad poems on the internet. But it also means that someone from India could read one of my poems, someone from Alaska could read one of my poems. You no longer have to physically go to a library or have a book in hand. You know, you just Google someone's name and put in poetry and her poems will pop up on the internet. And you can download it and print it out without having to pay a penny.
You know, Dr. Shirley, about equality, especially gender equality among women, how did you manage to have a great work-life balance? You know, in your as a mother, as a teacher, as a writer, poet. You know, I mean, how do you manage that? I mean, it's a lot of work. You know,
Well, one thing I have to say, I've been very fortunate in that I apparently have a lot of physical energy. Everyone has said that about me since I was a young child, and have this reserve of energy. But more than that, you have trade-offs. I don't go to movies. I'm a recluse in many ways. I seldom go out. I don't play mahjong. I don't play golf.
you don't dine?
I don't what?
Do you dine?
We-
Of course.
Well, yeah, I do, but you know, I dine in within 15 minutes. I'm done.
Oh, okay.
I don't have much of a social life, frankly. I do have dear friends, and I try to spend some time with them. My child might say that he was a little bit neglected because I went off and did a lot of teaching, visiting. Although I tried my best not to let that get in the way of mothering. My husband might complain that he's a little bit neglected. So this work-life balance is not really achievable. Something has to give. I think my writing also has had to be sacrificed. I have not written the novels that I wanted to write. I still have a few. You know, someone once said there's a T-shirt that I've seen, so many books to read, so little time. Whereas for me, I would have a T-shirt that says, so many books to write and so little time. So I think of all those books that were to be written and that have not been written because I've been a teacher. I'm a very dedicated teacher. That's one thing I'll say. I'm a dedicated teacher more than I'm a dedicated writer. And that's because I think once you make a commitment, a contractual understanding that these young people are in your care, you need to maintain that commitment. You need to honor the commitment that you've made to these young people. Which is why I work very hard as a teacher, but as soon as the teaching is over, I tell them, you know, I'm done. Don't send me your poems and stories anymore because I don't have time to read them. I have you for this moment and then it's gone, because I write them their letters of references. I would say that your statement is not accurate. I don't keep a work-life balance. I'm constantly unbalanced.
I understand. And another thing about being a writer, teacher, do you have a mentor that actually assists you in your writing, especially your poems and all that in your life?
No. In many ways, I would call myself an autodidact, someone who teaches herself. Of course, I went through school, I had professors, but you know, growing up in Malaysia, where English was not the language of the community, it is no longer the national language, it's seen as a secondary language. I essentially educated myself, and I educated myself through libraries. I am a fervent supporter of libraries. Of course, now with the internet, you may not need libraries, but you still have to be middle class to afford the internet. And I grew up as a very poor child. So if I were to be where I was then, I wouldn't be able to afford an internet in my home. So the library is still a space for me.
So you say that libraries may not be relevant today.
For the upper middle class and the middle class. Because, you know, there's Gutenberg. You can go to Gutenberg on the internet and you can download anything, or lots of things that are no longer copyrighted. Right? You can just read them on the screen. And of course, if you had the money, you could get Kindle and just order these ebooks from Amazon, any place, and you can be reading the ebooks all the time, including a book that just came out a month ago. So libraries in that way are under threat. But I think for poor communities, working class communities, libraries are very, very important. It's a place of shelter, both physically and intellectually, for young ones and older ones.
Now, tell us, I know that you have some reports that's not been published yet.
Yes.
And we would like to hear you, share with us.
Oh.
And at the same time, what advice would you give for aspiring, writers, poets, and especially women, who, there is a need, a void that they've been questioning. They try to pen it down and they're always discouraged. So what advice would you be able to give them to start with?
The advice I would give women who want to be writers is that they have to carve a space for themselves. They have to schedule that space, and they have to preserve it diligently. That space may be early in the morning before the children wake up. That space may be in the afternoon before the children come back from school. But they need a space, maybe 2 hours, maybe all they have. I remember when my son was born, a little infant is like a huge responsibility. And I finally found a babysitter that would take him for 2 hours each time. And during those 2 hours, I wrote my stories. And up to that point, before he was born, I had a lot of free time. And I frittered it all away. I'd be spending the free time in angst. Anxious over this, anxious over that, frittering my time. As soon as he was born, I realized, my time is all gone. And that was when I really began, finally, seriously, to say, I need to sit down. He said, the babysitter, I need to sit down and take these 2 hours to write my stories. Do you see what I'm saying? That was when the urgency of time became really felt by me. And maybe at that moment, I really became more disciplined as a writer. If my son had never been born, perhaps I might never have published my books.
So time is precious. And
you feel that once you no longer have it. When you have a lot of it, you will waste it, really. W-A-S-T-E, you will waste it. So for these women who are pressured for time, they need to carve a space and defend it. And so the husband complains, the child complains, their friends complain. They have to say, these are the 2 hours, if I don't have them, you'll find me in the funny house. Or you will find me cranky. You can't live with me, I'll be so cranky. And spend those 2 hours writing.
Wow. Now, before we end, we'd like to hear some of your unpublished works, and also to encourage us how the world can be a better place.
Oh, Robin, the first is easy to do, the second is much harder. The world is a tough place, but there are old-fashioned sayings like, it's not how the world is, but how you approach the world. The world has always been tough. Some centuries it has been even tougher, especially for women. Right? Lots of women died in childbirth. Lots of women were abused, and as they are today, and killed in honor killings by brothers and fathers and husbands who are supposed to protect them and love them. But it's how we women approach the world, how we face it. If we face it with courage, with humor, with cunning, then out of that cunning maybe wisdom might come. You can tell, right? But my poems, I have a bunch of them. I told you I've been trying to write one a day in the United States.
Please.
So I have a bunch that really fall into 2 books, for which I have given titles. The first is called Domestic Gardens, And they really, for the first time, come out of my experiences in Santa Barbara. I've lived in Santa Barbara since 1990. And because I've lived in so many places in the world and I've been constantly moving, it's been hard for me to feel at home. It's hard for me to feel my roots are going down because I'm constantly pulling them out. But in Santa Barbara, finally, I'm beginning to have a sense of home. So I'm writing these poems about neighborhoods and neighbors. And by the neighbors, I don't mean people who accidentally live near you. I mean people I talk to and chat with, and I know about their lives and they know about me. The old-fashioned world of neighbors, you know, the old-fashioned neighbor. So I'm writing those poems in a book that I'm calling Domestic Gardens. And the other one is called A Walker's Alphabet, and it comes from my walking. And I'm playing with the notion of writing a series of poems based on the letters of the alphabet. So I have poems that are titled A, B, C, D, E, and they are poems that come out from the alphabet, right? So I'm not sure which to read to you, frankly.
Oh, please read the bunch that you have, and maybe the best three, or.
Oh, I don't know about the best three. I don't know which are the best or anything.
Please proceed.
Let's see. All right, I will read you maybe something on Santa Barbara. The neighborhood, maybe. Either that or the mouse. Let me read the mouse to you. This is an incident that really happened, and I was, of course, playing on Robert Burns' poem on the mouse as well, but this is a very different kind of poem. And it's in stanzas or trains. It's pretty formal. A hot September Wednesday, I left the door to the bird-seeded tomato crow hollowed figgy yard open. And of course some deft and furry something must have zipped, drawn to the snug plenty inn. That afternoon, plenty of rustlings among the plastics, papers, and clipped herbs drying. I figured immediately we were sharing with some small beast our larder of lentils, basmati rice, chickpeas, lima and pigeon beans, black-eyed kidney. It must have thought it died and gone to bean heaven. And no dint of clean and search will flush it out into the open. Until a day later, barefooted and alone, moving to light the evening with a reading lamp, my calloused soul on the Berber stepped on a baby's softness. Both leapt, and I, nerves sinking, looked for what had jumped besides me, reminded of my own soft breast, pressed hard between glass, its cowering crushed, and the small, affrighted thing the knife had taken out, but still living beast, licking late at night the crumbs of chocolate. It wasn't until Friday, vacuuming the carpet, I found the gray and white furry tuft under the chair where it had sought shelter from the giant shadow's tread. Safety and the chocolate crumb, his last memory. I'm not sure if
That was
the story.
No, it's pretty good. Very intense.
Well, you know, I was having a little health scare at that point with cancer. And as you get older, the C word keeps cropping up and becomes a shadow, right? You know, older men worry about prostate cancer, women worry about breast cancer. Cancer is a huge killer. It culls the human population. Maybe it's just as well, so there will be so many of us aged in the world. So I have a number of poems like that. Let me perhaps read a poem that I had fun writing with my students. I told you I'm a teacher.
Oh, yes.
So here in Singapore, I make my students write villanelles, which are it's a very ancient, venerable form, but they have a lot of fun doing it. And sometimes my students are writing, I will write with them. My feeling is I shouldn't make students do what I cannot do. Right? Just like a piano teacher cannot teach a child to play the piano unless she can play the piano very well herself. So I got the students to write a villanelle, and I wrote one in fun. So this is just a throwaway, humorous little thing, and it is based on another villanelle by Wendy Cope, which is "Do You Live in North London?" And it's a list of ads, you know, the personals they're called, where you put in this ad looking for someone to hang out with you, right? So this is "Do You Live in Singapore?" Are you Singaporean?
No, I'm not.
You're not, but I hope you've been here long enough to catch some of the language here. So the title is "Do You Live in Singapore?" Can someone make my mother's wish come true? Transnational CEO with private plane. Do you live in Singapore? Is it you? Rich, connected family, not kiasu. Successful lawyer, smartly dressed and sane. Can someone make my mother's wish come true? Generous, arty type also can do. So long as Harvard, Yale, NUS trained. Do you live in Singapore? Is it you? Better if you have freehold bungalow, Thompson, Holland Village, villa in Spain. Can someone make my mother's wish come true? President scholar with high EQ too. Sensitive, sexy dancer with a brain. Do you live in Singapore? Is it you? Only citizens need apply, with few other requirements. Preference, Christian. Can someone make my mother's wish come true? Do you live in Singapore? Is it you?
Wow.
I had a lot of fun writing this.
That was. How did you find that?
I mean, there was this poem by Wendy Cope, which is, you know, do you live in North London? Is it you?
Oh, yes.
And so this is a parody or, you know, a variation of a poem.
I like that.
And you just put in what you know of Singapore, right?
So that's your impression of what Singapore is.
It's my fun take on it. But apparently there are lots of women like that in Singapore looking for men like that. Right?
Wow, I must envy you.
Why?
No, your observation is immense. Now I must ask you this question, and that is, how did you manage to keep in good health? What's your secret of your diet? I mean, you have good eyesight, and some people.
Oh no, my eyes are very bad.
Oh,
it's
sorry.
just that I'm not wearing my glasses.
I'm sorry, you know, but how do you keep yourself in good shape?
Thank you for the compliment.
Is there a diet?
I take it as a compliment. No, I love food. I'm
Ah.
a true Singaporean Malaysian.
Okay.
I love food. I love going to the hawker centers. You know, popiah, rojak, laksa, char kway teow, carrot cake, you name it. Chi kueh. I know all the stalls. I walk. I'm a walker.
Oh, okay.
And walking, you know, the neurosurgeons now are doing really hard empirical studies, and they say that walking is one means for neurogenesis. That is, we used to think that brain cells die but couldn't regenerate. Well, that's proven to be false. And walking is one sure way to have brain cells regenerate.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
You didn't know that. Now you'll be a walker too.
Oh, yes, I will. And you know, before we go and part, and there's one question one of my fans is asking, and I'm going to ask you this, and please don't be offended.
No.
What would be your advice or your lifetime take on life itself? You have lived this far, this long.
I'm 67.
And yes, and of course, that,
Venerable age.
you know, many of the young women and men would like to know what would be the one advice would you give, you know, to them that you have learned.
Actually, I just emailed 4 mantras to one of my students who was going through a little difficult thing. And I don't know that I would hold to all of them, but these are the 4 mantras I've learned at various times in my life. One is from the Latin, and I can't remember the Latin too well, but translated to English it says, "Don't let the bastards get you down." So don't let yourself be pulled down by, people who are out to get you or me. The other one is don't sweat the small stuff. That's very American, right? So, keep a sense of perspective. Don't sweat the small stuff. And of course, some people would say, don't sweat the small stuff and everything is small. I would disagree with that. And another one, my dear friend who's in her 70s, she's taught me this and she learned it from her mother. So this probably goes back a long way, and this is a dear friend of mine who's Jewish American. So I think it's a very Eskenazi saying,
yes.
right? Which is, this too will pass. So it's 4 words said by people who learn to persevere. This too will pass. And then lastly, and this is the one I made up for myself, keep your eye on the prize. So if you will keep your eye on the prize, what is it that you want to do in life, right? You will get there.
Well, very well said and with wisdom. Dr. Shirley, thank you for joining us here at the National Critics' Choice.
Thank you so much.
It's been a humble time for us and for myself. And folks, thank you for joining me here at the National Critics' Choice online news, which is the Stienberg review. And please do get hold of our books. It's all available on Amazon. And if you don't get it, well, please send an email to her, and she'll be readily available to respond to you as soon as possible. Once again, I'm Robin Stienberg. Thank you for joining me, and have a good week ahead.